Hi, it's Alicia from the Pretty Brown Eyed Reader. Today I am coming with a video to answer the question, was my reading diverse in 2016? For my reading to be diverse, I should be reading things that are opposite to what I am. I am an African American female, so my immediate attraction to reading is going to be to like similar types of demographics, African American females. So for me, diversity in reading would mean reading a demographic that is different than I am. Nothing wrong with African American women. We are a very dynamic group. We are an awesome demographic, but it's just I want to make sure that I am seeing a more worldview than that could easily be just if I just concentrate on reading one specific type of author. The way that I came about wanting to read something opposite of what I am or different from me is I coordinate a community-based book club at my local library, and the goal of the book club is to read more African American authors. I did not create this book club. It was actually created by a library director in the early 2000s who looked at the patrons that were coming into the library and saw that the readership among African Americans was low. So she thought if she could get an African American authors book club started, that would be a way to highlight African American writing so that more African Americans would choose to be patrons of the library. Prior to me coordinating the book club, it was coordinated by library staff, and it was more something that was on their to-do list, and they really didn't put a lot of effort into it. So the things that the book club read were like contemporary, nothing wrong with it, but contemporary books that really didn't cause a whole lot of discussion. And so one of my long-term book club members told me at the end of 2015, which was the first full year that I was coordinating the book club, that that was the first time that they had ever read men authors and nonfiction and just different things other than African American females. So that conversation threw me back a little bit, and made me take a look at my own personal reading habits. And so for 2016, I wanted to make sure that I was including nonfiction writing as well as African American males in my readership. So let's take a look at my statistics and see that I have a diverse reading year. So first and foremost, I looked at gender and total. Oh, by the way, I'm not looking at the number of books that I read. I'm looking at the number of authors. And for 2016, I read 64 different authors. For me, it's more important to make sure that I'm looking at different types of voices, not a number of books or pages. I want to make sure that I'm looking at different types of people. So for 2016, I read 64 different authors. Some of them I read multiple works by them, but I did read 64 different authors, and out of those 64, 36 were female and 28 were male. So that's about 56% female and 44% male. I had hoped to get it 50-50, but I can work on that in 2017. I didn't want to just do like male, female, but I just wanted to make sure that I was including male and female. So breaking that 64 authors down even further, I broke it down by race, and the top race that I read was African American. I read 32 authors, so that was 50% of my reading was from African American authors. 18 of the authors that I read were white Americans, and just white in general, because I did read some from the UK and Australia. And then 14 of the authors that I read were people of color, whether they were African, Asian, Native American. And those were the main demographics. Dominican, Hispanic. So 14 out of the 64. So my breakdown was, by percentage, was 50% African American, 22% people of color, and 28% white. So that probably is about right. I knew that my largest percentage should have been African American. That's because that's what I'm pretty much drawn to, and I have read throughout the years. So to break that down even further by race and gender, I want to make sure that I wasn't overly heavy with African American females. And so out of the 64, well, out of the 32 that were African American, 20 were African American female and 12 were African American male. So out of the 64, I read 31% of my books were from 31% of my authors were African American female and 19% were African American male. Okay, so I'm not sure if I accomplished my goal because I didn't have a baseline of how many African American males I had read previously. So I think I'm going to use this year as a marker to make sure that I don't know if I'll ever get it to the level of reading the same amount of African American female and African American males, but I do have a baseline to make sure that I am including African American males into my reading. So moving on, another thing that I looked at was fiction versus nonfiction. Out of the 64 authors, 42 of the authors were wrote fiction, and 22 wrote nonfiction. So that was about a 66% fiction, 34% nonfiction. I actually thought that the nonfiction would be a little bit higher because I thought I read more closely to like half and half, because a lot of times I'll be reading a fiction book at work and a nonfiction at home, or a nonfiction at work and a fiction at home. So that shook me just a little bit that the nonfiction wasn't as high as I thought it would be. And out of those different types of reading, I read 5 works of 5 different poets. I read 6 different short story authors, and that was because of For the Love of Ryan's channel, where he does a short story Saturday, and so that helped broaden some of my exposure to different authors. And also, before this year I had never read graphic novels, and I actually read 2, and so that was something different. Going back a little bit to looking at race and gender issues with my diverse reading, I noticed with the books that I DNF'd that a large majority were from white authors, and so I kept looking at these numbers, and I was wondering, am I dismissive of the white voice? And I was like, no, it can't possibly be it, because I'm really trying to be inclusive. But then I looked at the genre, and so the genre that I was DNFing were fantasy, sci-fi, and YA. I was trying to broaden my reading taste for this year, 2016, just trying different things, and I just do not like sci-fi, fantasy, and YA. And so that made it to me look like skewing that I wasn't, because I DNF'd 11 books and 7 of those authors were white, and I just don't think it's the dismissive part of the race of the author. Is just the genre, because I just don't like those books, because I just don't even like it. I've tried, but it's just not working for me. Some other demographics that I looked at after the whole diversity issue that came up on BookTube this year and Diversathon is I began to look at the religion of some of the authors to make sure that I'm inclusive of all kinds of writers, not just Christian writers. So after I start, so I'm not, these numbers are not really, because I didn't go back and look at the authors prior to Diversathon. So this is after Diversathon when I started looking at this. I read 2 works by Muslim that I could openly find out that what their religion was. 2 were Muslim, 1 atheist. So that was for my religion diversity. But I would pay more closer attention in 2017 to that. And another thing that came up during Diversathon is the sexual orientation of different authors. And after Diversathon, I was able to see that I did read 3 gay authors. So I will, but that was just if they identify in their writing or is known in their background or whatever. So I don't know who is gay and who's not, but just to make sure that I am inclusive of all people, I just wanted to add that from the discussions that were going on during Diversathon. So those were my statistics for the year. What were yours? Did you, after looking back on your reading, did you find anything that was surprising to you about what you read? Thanks for watching and have a great day.